you need to hire a private investigator today, or have you considered hiring a private investigator in the past? Are you a PI and you just wonder what the process is that individuals go through when they are looking to hire a private investigator? Finding the right private investigator can be a very daunting and a very frustrating event. I know that if you're looking for a PI, you already have a great deal of pressure due to the circumstances that you find yourself in. The first thing I would suggest for anyone looking to hire a PI is to make a list of the reasons that you need to hire a professional investigator. This list may be very short or it could be very long. An example for your list for a case where you think your spouse is cheating might look something like this. He comes home late on certain nights. When he comes home on these nights, he seems distant and disinterested. He always says he was with friends or coworkers, but he never says their names. He gets texts late at night. He keeps his phone away from me. The kids say there is a lady who stops by sometimes when I'm at work. If you're a business person and you think your business partner may be embezzling money or running a competing business on the side, the list might look something like this. She suddenly has new expensive things like a new car and fancy jewelry. She meets with a lot of clients, but sales have drastically decreased. She comes into the office late most days and leaves early most days. Your list needs to have some details like these examples so you can give that to the prospective PI so they can thoroughly evaluate the case and decide what course of action may be necessary. This video is sponsored by OREP Insurance and Working PI Magazine. OREP is a leading provider of private investigator liability insurance. Visit orep.org for a quote today. You should also add to your list some ideas of what the investigation may be able to do to help you in your case. For instance, in a cheating spouse or a child custody case, surveillance is often prudent, as well open source intelligence or OSINT investigations might be appropriate. For a business fraud case, surveillance may also be relevant, as well OSINT and a comprehensive background for all those involved. The next step for you is to prepare yourself. You must be prepared. You need to talk to 3 to 5 potential investigators. When talking to private investigators, keep in mind their primary goal is to close the sale. After all, that is their job when they're on the phone talking with prospective clients. Your job, though, is not to find the PI the quickest, but to find the one that is the best fit for your needs. You, like most people searching for a PI, have probably never done this before and most likely will never have to do it again. So finding the right one the first time is your highest priority. Now you need to sit down in a quiet place away from distractions and get on the internet and start your search. For most cases, I suggest you start with your state Private Investigators Association. When you go to these association websites, you will usually find something like Find a PI or the member list or something that references how you can find a PI in that area. Inside there, you will usually be able to drill down to PI investigation specialties, geographical areas, and you can see the members' profiles that show everything they do and what areas they cover. One thing you need to keep in mind, there's no PI that truly does everything. Most PIs specialize in a few types of investigations. However, some may list just about everything under the sun and some things you've never heard of, just so they can appear to have more expertise than others than what they really have. They are usually hoping to get calls where they can refer clients to another PI and hoping to get a referral fee or a kickback from that PI. If you see a PI's profile that looks something like this, then you might want to be a little skeptical as to whether they have any true specialties, and you may want to vet them even more carefully. As well, if their profile shows the same for geographical areas and lists every town in the state, especially for larger states, there might be some concern there, as well as most PIs tend to work within about an hour or so of their office or their hometown. Now you need to pick at least 5 PIs or firms to look at. Jot down their names, their investigative specialties that fit your needs, their phone numbers, and their websites. For each of these PIs, you should review their website and see if it is professional and speaks to handling your type of case. You also want to check with your state licensing authority and make sure they are licensed as required and their license is in good standing, and if they have any complaints that have been filed against them. From your research, you should now be able to make a list from 1 to 5. If any of them just came across in your research as a definite no, then scratch them off your list now. You should now start calling the PIs, starting with number 1 and then go on down the list. If you have to leave a message, and many times you will have to leave a message as most PIs are working on other cases, make note of the time that you left the message. I would suggest your message be brief, but give enough detail so they have a good idea of your need. If you have not heard back from them in, say, 24 hours, I would suggest that they get scratched off your list as well. When you speak with the private investigators, you need to give them as much detail as you can without specifics like people's names, addresses, etc., so they can evaluate your particular situation. You should take note of the things and questions that the PIs ask you. Do they seem to be listening? Do they come up with potential solutions for your case, or do they just throw out some generic quote? If they reiterate things that you said, that's a good sign. It shows that they are listening and trying to ensure that they understand. If they just listen and when you're done talking, they just say, we can start that investigation for X dollars, they may not be the best fit for you. Too many times I see PIs that just give a starting price. We can start that case for $1,000. What they often really mean is they will get that initial retainer fee, then build a case plan using that retainer fee just to cover their time building the plan, do a little snooping around, and then they keep coming back for more money time and time again. Your best bet is a professional investigator that can give you a good idea of what the entire investigation will cost. For instance, a fraud case may be initiated with, let's say, a $2,500 retainer. That will include comprehensive backgrounds on the two individuals in question, 3 days of surveillance, report time, and other research. And after that, dependent on our findings, we may need to discuss further investigation as necessary. Make note of what they offer and don't make that decision on the fly. You want to discuss this with other potential PIs, and then you may need to go back for follow-up questions. One of the most important pieces of information you should get from them while interviewing them is what type of insurance do they have and what type of bond do they have. They need to have, I would say, $1 million or more of liability and errors and omissions insurance to cover any mishaps that might occur during the investigation, and a bond in the amount that covers your retainer. The bond really protects you, the consumer, if they run off with your retainer and never do any work. You can then go after that bond. You then should use all the information from each one of the PIs, formulate a list of follow-up questions, and call each one back and ask them those follow-up questions. Now you should have a good idea what each of them has to offer, and hopefully you can narrow it down to 2 to 3 PIs. Your final decision may be based on experience, price, gut feel, or even a combination of a lot of things that you've considered. You have now decided on the PI to use. You should enter into a contract with them. If they do not offer contracts, I would be very leery about doing business with them. This is standard practice for most legal businesses. In fact, licensing requirements for PIs in most states require a contract. You should also ask to get a copy of their insurance certificate, not the entire policy, the certificate, and their bond along with the contract. Go over the contract in depth and write down notes and questions. If needed, have an attorney or an accountant go over it with you, or at least a friend who understands a little bit about legalese. You may not have the ability to make changes to the contract, but you can always ask for changes, and you need to know the details of the contract well before signing it. Once signed, make sure you get a signed contract. You should expect to see things in the contract like the hourly rate, how your money is going to be spent, reporting expectations, cancellation clause. If you want to cancel, you want to be able to get out of it. During the investigation, you should be able to get progress updates as well, so you want to discuss this with the PI. After the investigation, you should get a report of findings along with video, photo, or other evidence that's gathered within a reasonable time frame, I would say 48 hours. You should discuss this with the private investigator so you know what to expect. You need to keep in mind your professional private investigator is a finder of the fact. They cannot make things happen throughout the course of their investigation. What they do is they investigate the matter at hand, they report the findings as well. They cannot guarantee results of the investigation other than they will work diligently and report what they have discovered.